Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you want to take your shooting experience to the next level, then check out Coltac gear for 100% made in America products. Coltac manufactures specialty gear designed for long-range shooting, hunting, and other tactical applications. From their support bags, suppressor covers, shooting mats, and a whole lot more, Coltac is creating tough, durable, and innovative gear for both civilian and professional markets. Go to coltac.com to see all that they have to offer. That's cole-tac.com. If you are looking to get a new rifle or build your own, look no further than Kelbley's. Kelbley's actions and rifles have a higher level of accuracy and hold 92 world records set on either one of their rifles or rifle actions. Whether you're looking for an ultralight mountain rifle or wanting to compete in precision rifle shooting, Kelbley's has you covered. Go to kelbley.com to find out more or give them a call as their customer service is the best. That's KELBLY.com. Kelbley's. If you're looking to take your hunting to another level, there's no better way to do it than by subscribing to onX Hunt. If you want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX is the #1 GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt or download their app today for a free trial. If you are wanting to become more accurate and deadly with your shooting, one of the best things you can do is upgrade your trigger with a Timney. Timney triggers are 100% made in America and have been since their founding, providing a crisp, reliable, and repeatable trigger break every time. I'll be shooting Timney triggers in my guns this year, and I hope you'll join me in shooting the world's finest trigger. Go to timneytriggers.com to get yours today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by a really awesome guy, a guy who mentored me in the turkey woods a few years ago, and somebody who I have come to really respect in the hunting field, and that is Brian Lynn. He is the VP of Marketing and Media, I believe, if I'm saying that correctly, at Sportsman's Alliance. Yeah, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. And we're going to be talking about the state of the hunt, what's going on politically all across the nation in regards to hunting and what you need to do to get involved and how to be proactive. And knowledge is power, and we need to make sure we educate ourselves as hunters to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the woods. So, Brian, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Doing good, buddy. How are you? You really got that intro down. You got that dramatic, hey, welcome to Soul Seeker Nation.
Well,
Like it.
I appreciate
You're
that.
really blossoming.
I'm trying to step into my own a little bit, really,
I like it.
own it. Brother, thanks for being on the show. We got a couple different people joining us and all that. All the listeners, feel free to ask whatever questions you want as we cover the different topics that are going on across this nation for the state of the hunt. I butchered your title. It's VP of what? What is your title again?
Close enough. Marketing and communications, but
And communications. Doggone it.
titles don't mean anything.
No, being a good person and supporting the things you love is important. So, Bri, you just got done writing the latest edition of Sportsman's Alliance magazine. That's going to be coming out when?
I'm right in the middle of it. I'm wrapping up different features, front of book stuff, back of book stuff. I'm doing it all right now. So my head goes from one topic to the next to the next. So if I have to use my Cliff Notes to be like, where am I again? Which month am I in? That's what I'm doing. But the Sportsman's Advocate, this issue should hit around May 15th, I believe.
Okay.
Being home. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know this last year, November was a very critical month for hunting and the domino effect of ballot box biology and how that had a critical start to really individually attack hunting state by state. And if they could win one, then it was a way to infiltrate and take down hunting across the West. Unfortunately, the voters turned out and supported the hunters in Colorado with the the cat initiative. However, it didn't end there and it just keeps going. So, do you want to give a little update on what happened with Colorado as far as it seems like this fight is continuing now?
Yeah, no, well, let's just back up. I mean, Colorado is just the latest in a long string of ballot box attacks. That's literally why the Sportsman's Alliance was created in 1977, was because of a ballot box measure in Ohio. That's when it all became politicized. The animal rights movement goes, hey, I mean, Wayne Pacelli said it. We can use the ballot box to end hunting and do it state by state, species by species. So it started back in the 70s. This is just the latest iteration. I mean, you're from Washington. I'm from Washington. We basically lost mountain lion hunting and bear hunting, at least with hounds and bait for bears, in 1996. So almost 30 years ago, we lost that.
Yeah.
California's lost it. Like, I mean, we're off, like, it's like the earthquake hit, and Washington and Oregon and California have just fallen off the side of the map when it comes to hounding type stuff. Um, but they see a real target rich environment basically
Mhm.
in Colorado, Washington too, especially right now. And there is a direct pipeline from Washington to Colorado. We've seen Jeff Davies, who was the head of the conservation stuff here for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. He left and took the director job at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Samantha Miller Bruger, whatever her name is, who was with Wildlife for All or Washington Wildlife First. She left and went to Colorado to head up the whole ballot initiative process.
Mhm.
So there's this pipeline. They're like ugly stepsisters or something,
Yeah.
Washington and Colorado, and they're really focusing on those because, Washington especially has just wide open laws, commission laws, that it makes it easier for them to push their path through.
Mhm.
And kind of the state of how everybody is with politics in Denver and Seattle and surrounding communities gives him a very easy path,
Right.
to pass things.
Right.
And so, yeah, Colorado, I was like, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? I'm talking last year about this time, and they're counting the votes and counting the signatures and seeing what would happen, and it happened, and thank goodness, the vote went our way. It that pushes them off, and I mean these things aren't cheap. I can't remember what the final count on the money side was, but it costs millions to
Mm.
run one of these. So it's not a willy nilly thing they like to do. They really have to plan and plot it. Even though they have hundreds of millions of dollars, millions are still a lot.
Right.
Um, and so, they did that, and everybody pulled together, and we got good messaging out there, across the board that worked within our industry with that hit with the mainstream people in Denver and Boulder and all those places, and ended up winning by about 10 points.
Mhm.
So that's thankfully what happened there.
Man, it seems like, it's like, okay, whack-a-mole across the country of just different things like, oh, there's a fire here, put it out. Oh, there's a fire here, put it out. What are the pressing issues in America right now in regards to hunting?
Oh, well, it kind of depends on what space you're looking at. I mean, guns are always an issue, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's just a big issue, overarching, that's even above hunting. But without guns, there's not a lot of hunting either. So
Right.
it's a paramount. And even things that are like permit to purchase, again, Washington and Colorado, have these permit to purchase schemes that are like, oh, you have to go through training, you have to do live fire training, you have to renew it every 5 years, you have to do this, you have to do that, and each time you have to pay for something, and if you don't, you can't buy a new gun, and then it turns into possession and mandatory storage laws, which we already have, all sorts of stuff. And so the gun issue is a big one. I just wrote a piece on this and kind of the things that impact hunters underneath the umbrella of hunting. That'll be in the next issue of the magazine. I believe there's 22 states across the nation. And I'm talking from deep south, Georgia, which had a good gun law,
Hmm.
strengthening its preemption laws, so cities or counties can't create laws that are stronger
Yeah.
than the state laws, all the way up to Washington, down to Hawaii, Virginia. I mean, across the board, there are places that, are implementing gun control laws that would impact hunters. So that's a big one always. Um, but then, you're talking legislation stuff. There's bears, there's dogs. The dog stuff is a friendly topic that they can latch onto because
Yeah.
they frame it as puppy mills and try to nail people who breed. So that's in several states we've seen, and so that hits kenneling, that hits breeding, that hits exchanging dogs in public. I think where was it? I can't remember which state it was. You couldn't meet your dog. It might have been Colorado. Um, you couldn't meet somebody to exchange a dog in public. So if you're at a field trial and you're picking up a puppy from a breeder that you're, meeting somewhere, that would be a class 2 misdemeanor, I believe it was. So things like that sound to the average person, they sound reasonable.
Mm.
But when you look at it, how it impacts the trickle down effect of how it impacts sportsmen, it has a detrimental impact on gun dog guys and hunting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and training sessions in Maine, there was an issue up there, and that was more of opening it up. They had opened up units, and they had been open for training and hunting of bear dogs, but they had to be reopened. So it bounces all around, and some of the things are like, yeah, we need to jump on these. Some of these we know we're going to die. Some are like, wait and see what the committee, where it lands, and how it processes. How our legislative affairs department tracks all this stuff, I don't have a clue. The committees, the votes, they're constantly counting and checking in, and how it's going to go, because we don't want to burn through human capital, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
hey, everybody jump on and click this alert and sign up and sign this and sign this, if it's not going to do any good. Most people will only click so many times and weigh in so many times before it becomes, crying wolf, you know.
Right.
So we try not to cry wolf and just really like, okay, this is an issue. This is an emergency. Get on this type stuff. But that's the legislative side of things. We've really been focusing on a lot of litigation. Last year we launched an in-house legal team to start playing the game the other side is doing.
Good. Play some offense, huh?
Yeah, and to do it how they do it, like yeah, comment, sue, file lawsuits. They've become masters at it. So let's take a page out of their playbook. So we hired in-house representation. I think we're in 7 lawsuits right now, 7 or 9, 7, I think, and we just settled 2 of them.
Wow.
Again, Washington and Colorado are right there. uh, we sued both of those game commissions. So Colorado, leading up to Proposition 127, they 2 of the active game commissioners wrote an op-ed that went into the papers, syndicated in the papers throughout Colorado, saying how they support Proposition 127, published all these blatant lies about hound hunting and hunting mountain lions. We starve the dogs to get their prey drive higher, which is just ridiculous. A whole bunch of just false information in this thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're also claiming that, they are held to a higher standard of science and just not opinion and stuff. And wait a minute, you're saying 2 different things here. So we sued the commission and those 2 commissioners. And so that one was settled. they're going to undergo training on their actual laws that they're supposed to be holding to a higher account to. They're going to go through training on that and their open policies, their open meeting policies.
Good.
You know,
Hold
yeah,
these
and
hold these
then
people accountable for what
yeah,
they say and how they operate, especially when
that's
you're in a
exactly right.
position of power, right? And influence. When you're in a
Yeah,
position of influence, you do not just get to willy-nilly and throw things out for what you just like, it feels good in the moment, right? Like,
yeah, you know, and Washington State. Last year or 2 years ago, we sued Lorna Smith, who was a commissioner, but we sued her personally. That went all the way to the Washington State Supreme Court and set precedent that no, you cannot hold two offices, even though in black and white legal law it says you can't hold two offices. They tried to argue that these weren't offices and she was just volunteering, blah, blah, blah. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. We won. Lorna Smith resigned from the Jefferson County Planning Commission because she is an anti-hunter, so she's going to hold on to the power she has as a game commissioner,
right.
of course. But then, it all kind of ties back. If you remember, I don't know, what's it been, 4 years ago, that they canceled the spring bear hunt.
Hmm. Right.
Well, it's been more than a year and a half ago we filed for public records access, asking for requests, Freedom of Information Act, saying, hey, we want these emails, texts, whatever communications between these dates and these dates, and filed, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them.
Hmm.
Just one of them for spring bear between certain dates, and just the commissioners yielded 33,000 messages. That makes it go, what are, 9 commissioners talking about that there's 33,000 messages?
Right.
We want to see those. Yeah, we want to see them. All total, our 4 or 5 requests yielded 477,000, something like that, records.
Wow.
So what's going on?
Hmm.
Washington, as usual, is a little wonky. Most states have a 30, 60, 90-day policy that you have to turn these records around and give them to the people. Washington is reasonable amount of time.
Oh,
So for 18 months, we just kept getting an extension, extension, extension. It was like, I think we got like 7 or 8 records out of 500,000.
wow.
I mean, at this rate, the guys did it. They said it would take 5,411 years to get our records request. And so obviously, this isn't good governance, right? Like, this is not how the government is supposed to work. They're not supposed to hide things. We're supposed to be able to see what our government officials are doing, appointed or elected. Um, so we filed a lawsuit against the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to do exactly as you're saying, hold them accountable.
Hmm.
Let's see the records. Let's see what's going on. Are there ex parte communication, which we've seen happen in commission meetings? Commissioners taking ex parte communication from animal rights groups. So we wanted to see what's in there,
Yeah.
but we're having to sue this and go to court to see it.
You know, it's really sad to see that you're suing these commissioners or these game departments that are funded by the public to waste time, and it's such a hassle, such a shame. We need a Doge. We need a Doge community for the hunting politics of this world. Like, let's get after it in that regard. Let's see where
Yeah.
the abuse and the waste is.
Yeah. And I mean, and Washington's special when it comes to that, in that it's wide open. The governor can appoint whoever he wants. And, the Senate, they're supposed to confirm them, but they don't have to. They can keep serving. They can serve immediately and keep serving until they get whatever
Hmm.
affirmed.
Right.
In most states, that doesn't happen. Most states, there's a there is a pathway to getting confirmed or getting elected and appointed and then confirmed in a certain amount of time. Washington is just wide open, can do whatever they want. And Jay Inslee abused that system like a mule. I mean, he like a rented mule. He just beat the hell out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and appointed anti-hunters, didn't always check with interested parties, sportsmen groups and stuff like that, and appointed people. The Senate pretty much fell in lockstep because he had such an iron fist in this state. So it's just it's an ugly situation. So hopefully a new administration will help.
Well, I did
Going
see.
to court with it.
Yeah, I did see that the new governor of Washington, Bob Ferguson, is trying to reappoint commissioners that were rescinded.
Well,
Is that true, or how's that being played
he,
out?
he Inslee on his way out the door, literally like the last week or something like that, reappointed one, Tim Reagan, and then appointed another gal who used to be at the Kettle Range, I believe. And Ferguson said, no, he reversed it, pulled him out of there and said, no, you're not getting appointed before they were confirmed, and said he pulled them out. Now they can be put back on the ballot and considered ballot. He can still take them into consider and appoint them himself, or he can appoint two others.
Yeah.
So now it's wait and see who is on his short list and who he's leaning towards and whatever. But it'd be really good if both of them were not on there.
Right. Hey, I'm on the website sportsmansalliance.org, and I clicked on the headline news. And you guys have a bunch of different articles up. It talks about Washington hearing for permit purchase, backdoor registry scheme, Colorado sportsman finance firearm registry, Kentucky legislative session, Rhode Island wildlife contest ban, South Carolina hearing to protect sportsmen's credit card privacy, Oregon amendment bill to continue assault on sportsmen. Like, how up to date is your news section on your website?
Very. I like those. I think I put the one up today.
Yeah.
So whatever that first one is, I don't remember because days and years blur together. But I'll put up 1 to 6 a day.
Awesome.
And so it's almost every day. Every now and then we'll have a day that isn't. I can actually write and do other work. But it's very up to date. I mean, you can see the dates. There is a date line in each of those articles.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it's multiple times a week. It's probably 3 to 5 times a week. It's getting updated at least by 1 or 3 stories.
What's this one in Nevada about youth hunting at risk?
That's one of the gun laws. So they would ban the possession of firearms by anyone under the age of 18, including shotguns. So you can't possess a gun.
It's not about ownership. It's about possession, holding on to something.
It's not about purchasing. It's about possession. So you can't. There you go. That puts that at risk. The registry stuff, the permit to purchase, Washington and Colorado. That's creating a registry. When the state has a list of people who are buying guns and jumping through all these hoops, it's creating a de facto registry, gun registry.
Mm-hmm.
They know who has guns now, and they know what guns.
And for the sake of the people listening to this podcast that might be slightly ignorant to the fact of why is that important? Why do we not want that to happen? Can you speak to that?
Well, why was this country founded? It was to fight a tyrannical government. We are supposed to have guns to push back against the government. If the government knows who has the guns and what guns and how many guns, they know where to start disarming people.
Yes.
and what houses to go to, what states to go to. And so it's the first step in a slide of taking guns, and the history completely supports it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love that.
everybody's gonna get armed.
Yes, we all should be armed. We all should practice our freedoms and rights as Americans, you know?
You don't practice it, you lose it.
Ain't that the truth? It's really interesting how these states, it seems like they are constantly like to use your term, backdooring sportsmen and Americans across the board. First it's, you know, you better make sure your firearms locked up because if it's locked up, then we're going to stop the crime in this world because it's locked up. But then certain times, like I own a gun safe. I actually need another gun safe, but that doesn't mean that gun safe is right next to my bed or however you secure your firearms for quick access for a self-defense scenario. And that all ties into the defense of hunting because you hunt with firearms. It's really interesting how they backdoor. They really do whatever they can. You said
Yeah,
possession um, over
purchase.
ownership or purchase.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
Small little
and
words.
yeah, and that's what the law is, right? It's just words. It's words, interpretations, application, context.
Which
And
is
so you change one word from shall to may. Now you've changed the entire context of it. They don't have to. With may, they don't have to issue a permit. They don't have to. Uh, Colorado, again, it was going to change their wildlife directive from shall. It was had to do with basically kind of their mandate on how the state would handle wildlife. Shall use hunting and fishing as the primary means to may use hunting and fishing. Well,
mm,
that gives them the leeway, much like we see here in Washington. I hate harping on these two states, but they're on the bleeding edge of all of this.
yeah.
They can establish precedents and point to us. They take it to the next state and the next state and the next state. If you can change from shall to may, then that gives a commission that would be so desirous, as in Washington,
Hmm.
to say, well, we don't have to, but we can do this. And it's within our power to say, no, we're not going to have hunting of these species. Exactly what Washington's doing with cougars and bears.
Yeah.
And and they this time they just did this. They gave all the rulemaking authority to Kelly Sussman, the director of Washington Fish and Wildlife. Said, okay, you can go ahead and make those rules, but the commission is going to save these rules, and we're going to make the rules around bear hunting and mountain lion hunting. And we're going to change how this is capped, and they're changing how what the bag limits are and how the units are open. So with mountain lions, it's capped at 16%, and 16% mortality, not hunter harvest, mortality. So all mortality goes into that cap. So unit 24 in Mount Spokane here in Washington State didn't even open up for mountain lions because there was more mountain lions killed by the state or by accident before
Ah.
the hunting season opened. So that we submitted comments arguing that and arguing the bear season. And there's state law precedent out there that if they pass these rules, there's a good chance we'll be in another third lawsuit with Washington State.
Then I teach social studies now. Back when you and I went turkey hunting, I was a PE teacher, but now I'm teaching social studies here in the great state of Texas. And I've always loved the U.S. Constitution. I love America. I love the Declaration of Independence. But now I'm really understanding, and it's sad that as an adult I'm finally come to this conclusion. Rather than as our youth of America, we need to instill this in them to understand the importance that you were talking about the difference between shall and may, right? Like may is the word may, yeah, insinuates permission, right? So like
Yeah.
I have students, they're like, Can I go to the bathroom? I don't know. Can you? Do you have the physical ability to? May I go to the bathroom? Yes, you may. You have permission to go use the restroom. And they don't, they're like, so stupid. Why do I have to say may rather than can? But this is the point of Americans and society nowadays, is that we need to understand the importance of words. Our words matter. Our words carry power, they carry authority, and how we operate with those words and how we apply those words can make the difference between life and death. In the Bible, it talks about the power of life and death is in the tongue. There's a reason why the very first amendment to the US Constitution in the Bill of Rights is freedom of speech. The ability to articulate and protect and defend through our words. And if that's not listened to and used properly, we got the Second Amendment to back it up and defend it physically. But ultimately, words, oh, it's just a bunch of words. Yeah. And they matter and they carry power and they can impact your life from the moment like a father saying to his son, I love you, or not saying I love you, has an impact in somebody's life throughout their trajectory and their entire path. So we got to be careful and we got to be aware. And along with that, understand definitions of words.
Yes, and then the context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Context and the application and what the ramifications are.
Yeah.
And that gets back to all of this, the wildlife and Colorado Prop 127 and the things we've seen all around the country. Is it can sound reasonable, but the people who are making the vote and the decision, which is largely metropolitan, suburban homes and housewives, they don't suffer the consequences and repercussions of mismanagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't care. Their vote's like, hey, whatever sounds reasonable and doesn't make me look like a bad guy. I don't want anything to do with killing a mountain lion. That's mean.
Yeah.
So I'm going to vote this way. Well, they have no skin in the game, but that's how we're set up. That's how our republic is set up and our voting. But they don't understand it. So we have to make them understand it and make sure they understand it.
Skin in the game is a pretty interesting concept when you look back at the history of voting rights and the ability of who can vote and who couldn't. And I was actually talking about this today specifically because you have to have skin in the game to have. I want to make sure I use my words right. Skin in the game is important because you can sway people who vote without having skin in the game, without actually caring about a topic or having any true impact in the result of their decision, can greatly impact a whole group of people and then be like, yeah, whatever. Right? Like skin in the
Okay.
game is a very important part of society and how we operate. So the democratic process.
Yeah. And when you're talking wildlife, we're outnumbered.
Right.
There's 15 million of us, give or take, in the entire country.
Yeah.
Now divide that by 50. You know, we don't have that many people, and the vote is against us.
Mhm.
So we have to figure out that magic key to make them understand and put skin in the game. And that happens in a variety of ways, even in Colorado. We saw a lot of our audience talking about conservation and wildlife management and all this stuff. It's my contention, and our organization has run a lot of ballot box stuff, run a lot of campaigns. I've done it myself. How many people, non-hunters, have you talked to about wildlife management and Pittman Robertson and all? I've done this having a beer, sitting there and you start like, oh yeah, I like hunting as long as you're doing it for food. I'm cool with it. I'm like, yeah, but there's this other side, and they're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. You talk about Pittman Robertson or Dingle Johnson, their eyes kind of glaze over and you see them start looking past you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The general public doesn't care.
No.
about conservation.
One of the things that
They
I
don't know.
no, they don't. It was, and
It's
it's
hard
not.
to wrap your head around. Half
It's
of our audience, half of hunters don't understand the process. So when
yes,
you're sitting there trying to talk to a non-hunter and you start talking about Pittman Robertson, Dingle Johnson, uh, tags, this, that, it goes right over their head.
right, right.
But if you can talk to them about things they understand and that impact them and put skin in the game, putting food on the table, ballot box initiatives, here's what we found. Colorado, Montana, Ohio, you have to make those suburban people care.
Hmm.
And particularly, the hardest people we have to convince are suburban women, mothers. They don't want to see anything get shot and killed. So you have to overcome that. What's the best way to overcome that? Emotion. You overcome that emotion with another emotion.
Yeah.
Women, mothers, protect their children. What happens if your mountain lion population gets out of control like it is here in Washington? What happens? People get eaten.
Right.
Point blank.
Yeah. It's sad.
Dogs and cats disappear. Moms don't like that either. But when your kid gets dragged away at 9 years old from summer camp, which happened here in Washington, and little girl had 127 stitches across her face, they don't like that. You have to remind them that, yeah, you do have skin in the game. Even Seattle mountain bikers going out for a mountain bike ride get attacked.
Hmm.
That's what happens when things don't work out right. Not conservation, not Pittman Robertson, not all the like, how do you convince somebody who doesn't give a rip about any of that with emotion?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to connect with the heart because the mind is separated. The logical side of things they don't care about. It's like how do I feel in the moment? It's all, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, when you talk about like political parties, the concept of like the liberal left is all emotion driven, right? And so you got to connect with the emotions that are energizing them and getting them to take action.
Yeah,
I always talk about on this podcast is you got to connect with the heart of people, and as a hunter you have to show up in society in a positive way. You got to be a likable human being, which sounds silly, like, oh yeah man, people like me. Like, no, you actually have to be a likable human being so that when your neighbor Susie knows about some ballot initiative coming up and she's like, well, Johnny and Brian, they love hunting and they love cougar hunting. They're not bad guys and I don't want to take that away from them, right? So, okay,
yeah,
I'm going to support them, not necessarily support the issue. And that is like
yeah,
an emotional connection once again to make sure that we win as hunters across the board.
yeah, yeah. And there's studies out there, and I wrote about it a couple years ago in the magazine that people who just know hunters are more likely to view it in a positive manner and support it. You go from, and it was like 70% or something like that. If they just try game meat, if one of those hunters gives them game meat to try, it jumps up to like 90%. So it just speaks to the power of what you're talking about of connections and talking to people and then sharing that with them, giving them a peek into the world. Not they don't have to do it, they don't have to go to Hunter Ed, they just have to be exposed to it and share in that with you.
Yeah. We got a comment, Jam Scott 82. Canada, BC dealt with this on the grizzly hunt in 2017. People from the inner city were misled and misinformed by NGOs and political gain. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, that was like social media driven and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yep, yep. So one of the things I work in alternative school, and we take a lot of like the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous psychology and application, and apply it to the students for what we call life skills. Because 70% of my students, my population, ends up incarcerated. We always talk about be the three that don't end up continuing on making poor decisions in your life. Well, a part of that is we always explain to them that anger covers hurt and or fear. So when you are talking with somebody and they get angry about hunting, or like, how dare you? How could you? What, like, that is covering hurt in their life, either hurt from a hunter or hurt from a memory of an animal, or fear of a lack of abundance, of scarcity, a scarcity mindset. And maybe it ties all the way back into the Disney movie of Bambi, where they made an emotional connection with Bambi and their mother. And then in that movie, if you watch it as an adult, you realize that that movie's not actually created in a real biological environment, because it's springtime and the deer have antlers and there's hunting. It's like, that's not a real movie, but yet it connects with people emotionally. And so when you understand that people, and especially how we perceive the world, is established between the ages of 2 to 6. From 2 to 6 years old is when we establish our belief system and how we operate, and it's filtered through our perception of how we view the world, which creates thoughts, feelings, emotions, actions, and those actions have consequences. So we need to take a step back, have patience, hold space for people, and say, I understand that you are angry, and that anger is covering some hurt or fear in your life about us not having enough wildlife, you losing an animal, you having some sort of hurt in your life from maybe an adult or a show or a movie that you watched, and that's okay. And that's not the reality of where
Yeah.
we're at. And that's hard to do, because a lot of us are just like, how come you don't understand this? Like, Pittman Robertson, don't you understand? We're all giving back to and
Yeah.
but it's the
Again,
emotional side.
emotion, emotion.
Yes, we have to hold space for their emotion, and then be able to address it and use it on them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, good for you for teaching at a school like that and trying to change the trajectory of the next generation, because that is a generational issue usually. So great on you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Everything you're saying is right on. Like my girlfriend, when I met her, anti-hunting, hated it, you know, didn't understand it. Like told her ex-husband, like, if you even go to deer camp to hang out, I'll divorce you. Well, we ended up divorced anyways, but now she's dating me, who's got all this dead stuff,
Uh-huh.
you know. And at first she's like, okay, I just don't want to hear about it. I don't want to see it. So of course, every time I kill something, I send her a picture of it with me in it. And she
Yeah.
yells at me and tells me not to do it. I'm just desensitizing her like I train dogs. You desensitize them. But she has slowly come around to it. I've explained things. There was a story here. Somebody was feeding moose or something, and the state had to come in and kill it. She's like, "Oh my god, that's horrible." I'm like, "What's the alternative? Have a baby moose that grows up into an adult moose,
Right.
and think people are part of the herd? Like that's not going to end well.
Yeah.
Just got to nip the problem
Yeah.
in the bud there." Now I've got her eating on occasion, eating elk, eating deer,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, okay, hers is like you were saying, she left Bambi at 6 years old crying,
Yep.
had to leave like just the first scene. She has never seen Bambi because she can't stand it. Hers is, I don't want to see it. She's like, I know the circle of life is there. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm like, okay, just realize that I am taking responsibility for what I kill.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else isn't killing. You're still killing, but I'm taking responsibility and I'm doing it all myself.
Correct.
Got hurt, so she's there. One of her friends was like, indifferent about hunting, whatever. Talk about mountain lions. She's scared to death of mountain lions. She's like, yeah, I don't want them. Like, yeah, they freak me out. So you kind of got to meet them where they're at sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Comment says, Jam Scott, I took a vegan Australian out moose hunting this year. Got him on and helped him fall in and shoot his first moose. He ain't turning back now. He's a meat eater. Yeah,
Wow.
congratulations. First off, I'd love to hear how that even ended up happening. How did you end up taking a vegan out moose hunting? Like, what was the, hey, you got
That sounds like a good story. That's a
yeah,
good podcast right there.
right. Like, hey, don't knock it till you try it type thing. Or if you're gonna eat, like, why? That's a really interesting. So if you want to keep dropping some comments, um, I'd love to hear that. He also said, "Do you guys have the numbers on how many cougars are harvested each year, and what percent of the population that affects? Is it 1 to 2%? And is the population able to regenerate at an equal or higher rate?" Do you know those numbers at all by chance?
No, because it varies by state, and within the state, it varies by units and everything else. So that's why they capped it. I think they said, that 16 to 20% you can harvest off,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to change the population at all. Seems to be at least what they've talked about here in Washington. Of course, they took the lower end. But here's the thing with hunting. We are hunting a surplus.
Right.
We aren't dropping it below the surplus. And the estimates that are out there are all conservative. They have all these formulas and whatever of visual of traps, whatever it is, from geese and ducks and wolves and quail calling and whatever else. The equations are always skewed to the conservative side
Mm,
by factoring in females and factoring in young animals and such. So we're always hunting the surplus. So when that surplus drops down, that's when they start closing units. That's when they reduce harvest. That's when they change regulations from, yep, you can harvest a doe now, to nope, you have to only kill a buck only.
right.
Or point restrictions that are supposed to, be indicative of age, which they aren't, but that's a whole nother topic. So they're always on the conservative side, and this idea, the anti-hunting side likes to promote that, oh, they don't really know, so they could over harvest. Okay, name one species we've over harvested in the last 100 years.
Right.
But our populations have only gone up
Yep.
and up. And when they do go down, it's usually tied to habitat loss or weather, drought, winter kill, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so then what we respond, it's a responsive model where we respond by cutting tags, cutting hunting until that comes back up.
Mhm.
That's the thing. We have a proven model. We have 100 years of proven that we can adjust and move on the fly and rebound species. The anti-hunting side that wants to incorporate new models and compassionate and empathy and yada 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 are guessing. And it's a reactive model that responds to, i.e., here in Washington, Unit 24, mountain lions are a problem. So the state goes out and kills them. And then they stop hunters from shooting more that would actually bring it down into an acceptable range. They're reacting to a bad situation. They're not fixing it. They're slapping a band aid on a gunshot wound.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tying it back into the emotional psychology of the stuff that I teach my students is that you never want to be reactionary. You want to be responsive, because responsive requires you to think things through. Reactionary
Proactive,
is just off the
responsive.
cuff and just like, oh, emotion
And
driven.
be proactive. Our model now is a proactive model.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Here's what we think will happen. Here's where our safe zone is. We don't want to go above this or below it or whatever.
Yeah.
Here's where we want to be. Here's how many hunters we have in that area. Here's the success rate. Here's what we can pretty much estimate is going to happen. And it's been fairly accurate for the last 50 to 100 years.
Right. Right. Real quick, because you brought up the word surplus, and since we already talked about the First Amendment and the power of words, that is a word that every hunter needs to like memorize, put in their wallet, stick in their back pocket, and be like, you need to understand that we hunt surplus of animals, not the minimum like majority of animals to knock it down below that threshold. There's
Yeah, there's the carrying capacity of the land, the biological carrying capacity, the social carrying capacity. So we are hunting a biological surplus. And all the populations fluctuate. And usually right after winter or in winter is when they're the lowest, because that's obviously the hardest time to live. Then in spring, early summer, they're the highest. And the biologists do a fantastic job of factoring that in, figuring out where the means are and all that. We are hunting the surplus.
yeah,
We get the tags to bring them back down a little bit. Everybody's happy, you know, and if you don't, it just keeps getting more and more. It's not like we're knocking them down to a threshold where your biological carrying capacity or your genetic diversity is impacted.
yeah.
It's just not happening. It,
It's
it,
it's fascinating. Growing up in the state of Washington, I never really saw a whole lot of deer. And it makes sense how and why you get one deer tag a year. You move down to the state of Texas, and I have at least 4 deer tags that I get to fill every year. And I see deer everywhere. More deer are constantly get hit by cars all the time down here. Like they have buzzards, these big birds. You can't shoot them. You see them everywhere. Why? Because they take care of the roadkill. There's that much roadkill on the side of the roads down here in the state of Texas because of carrying
I just,
capacity.
I will literally I'm parsing. We just came out with a new report, new research on the costs of replacing hunting and trapping. And I was delving into this to divide things up for a feature I'm going to write about this and in the next magazine. And it talks about the number of car accidents, how much it costs, the insurance companies, and then it even gets into, and I believe Texas was the state, how much it costs to remove roadkill. It's like
Hmm.
$130 to remove every deer.
Yeah.
So that's another cost. So that'll be an interesting one to put out, and we will have that. I got to get that up on the website too. So that will be up very soon. The cost of replacing hunting and trapping.
I love that. Okay, just a couple other comments I'm going to read here. The guy said the vegan who was taken hunting was a good friend, but yeah, we got down to the bottom line, which is don't knock it till you try it. And he called me on my bluff and came out for the moose trip. Since then, has recognized the importance of hunting and conservation. I love that. He also says, thanks for explaining this to me about the cougar hunting. Again, I'm Canadian and I'm interested in what your guys, as far as America goes, in regards to our struggles and how we battle anti hunting. He says, my policy is with the fact and education in my debates. That's what he's constantly going up against. So, man, it's a real thing. We got to educate ourselves. A society that's not educated is a society that's doomed to fail, right?
Yeah. And just to answer his question, when I talk to people, whether they're indifferent or anti or whatever else, I really just try to drill down to what they're talking about. Like, oh, so why don't you like it? Well, I think it's mean. Well, a lot of things are mean. Is it more mean to shoot it or let it starve, die from ticks or whatever? What happens with the mountain lions? Again, kids get eaten, pets get eaten, wolves,
Right.
same thing. Bears come into yards. I mean, you got just Google New Jersey bear fights in town or something like that, and you will get YouTube videos of two big boars going to town and I think it was Rockaway, is city. Like in the suburbs, there's houses right there and cars, and they're fighting by the cars. You know,
Yeah.
wildlife survives. It fights and thrives and goes on. So it's not going anywhere. We have to manage it. And my bottom line is, yeah, nature will balance itself, but that balance is not. It's a cruel balance, and it's a boom and bust balance. And so we are the biggest impact on the landscape. Cities, towns, highways, freeways, farms
Yep.
where all the vegans grow their food
Yep.
takes up habitat.
Yeah.
It's really selfish and irresponsible of us not to manage the booms and busts
Yep.
of wildlife
Yeah.
if we're going to have that big of an impact.
Yeah.
We're not in a fishbowl anymore. We're not in a big aquarium.
No.
So,
No. Okay, so we're going to shift gears here to a different topic that impacts our pocketbook and our privacy as human beings. So,
yeah.
South Carolina has a hearing to protect sportsmen's credit card privacy. So, this is interesting. I haven't read the article yet. I'm interested to hear what your take is. But what I know is my privacy is constantly being stolen by every single application that we use or website that we use. And the last thing I want is my data and information being sold out or farmed out to more creditors to hit me up because I bought a hunting license in the state of South Carolina. What is that one all about?
Okay, so the credit card tracking is something that came out a few years ago. It's called MCC, Merchant Category Codes. So every time you go to a store to buy something, you use a credit or debit card, a merchant category code is attached to it. What the anti-gun folks did a few years ago is, hey, we need to know who's buying these guns. So if we see a pattern, the Las Vegas shooter, a couple of other shooters bought guns very soon before they did their heinous crimes, bought lots of ammo. So like we want to know who's buying guns and ammo, and we can do that by tracking credit card purchases. And so they created special codes that would separate if you go to uh, Cabela's or you go to any other store and you buy merchandise and you buy a gun or you buy ammo, there would be different merchant category codes. It used to be guns and ammo went into the same general purchase. Now they're trying to parse them out so they have their own category code of guns and ammo. And what happens then, just like a permit to purchase, the government or whoever
Big
can go to the
Daddy.
bank and say, give me this information of who's buying guns and ammo. It creates a de facto registration again. And so it goes from the backside, from the banking side of things. So far, California, Colorado, I can't remember if Washington did it, but those two states passed it.
Mm.
Now you see a bunch of red states lining up to prohibit it. Most of the red states have prohibited it right now. Delaware's the only one who has it active this session, who had it active this session. I think it died. But the ones who lined up to prohibit it were Arkansas, Arizona, North Carolina, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Wyoming. They all said, no, you can't do this in this state. So they're forbidding it. And so that's one of those gun battles. And it's one that slips under the radar a lot. Like, why is this important? Like, this isn't a big deal. It's like, oh, well, the state is creating a gun registry with the banking, and we've seen this before. Operation Choke Point in the Obama administration. They choked off loans and everything else to businesses that dealt with guns.
Hmm.
And so that's where you're seeing big business and government working together. So that's something we fight tooth and nail, and that a lot of states are fighting. But you still have some of these that are on the bleeding edge on
What
that gun control side trying to push.
it happened in Canada during the trucker protests. I don't know. Do you remember the trucker protests? And people were supporting the truckers through PayPal and sending them money so that they could continue to keep their trucks running and have
Yeah,
food and all that. And then PayPal cut them off and they shut down their bank accounts. And Canada went full on what's Orwellian or whatever,
yeah.
dictator and said, sorry, you don't have money anymore because we don't like what you're doing. And that is not okay. That's America. Yeah, our Canadian fella, he goes, "Oh yeah, Trudeau froze all their accounts." Yeah, no, thank you, not on my watch. And a lot of people, if you don't study history, right? You don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Like
Yeah.
go read the book 1984. Figure it out. Learn. Like hello, that book wasn't written in 1984. It was written a long time ago, and yet all this stuff seems to be more prophecy than anything else. Um, that's really fascinating. And this is why we need our monetary system decentralized. Like, you know, cash
Yeah.
is king, right? Pay with cash, not with card, and everything wants to go cashless. Oh, we don't accept cash anymore. Well, in our U.S. Constitution, it says that gold and silver is legal tender, and I should be able to pay with this. And here's money. See you later. Um, I don't know. I mean, this is where hunting and politics are so intertwined. They're
Oh
so
yeah.
intertwined, and people like to separate them. And I'm like, oh, you can't really separate them. You can't.
No.
The ability for you to feed yourself and defend yourself go hand in hand.
Yep. Yep. And if and that's one of the great shortcomings of our industry is we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to do it. And I'm talking from companies are like, yeah, we don't want to get involved, down to bird hunters or whatever that are like, nope, that's not my deal. That's not my deal. We're very siloed.
Mm,
That doesn't impact me. I don't want to do that. But then within those silos, we'll argue amongst ourselves about compound bows, crossbows, muzzle loaders, rifles, and we'll slit each other's wrists while somebody else is slitting our throat.
right.
You
Right.
know, so it's like, nope. If you want to keep doing this, you today want to keep doing this, and you want your kids to be able to do this, you have to get involved in politics, and you have to stop beating the hell out of each other. We're all on the same team.
Right.
Start pushing in the same direction and fighting against the common enemies. And there's multiple enemies. It's the anti-hunters. Sometimes it's state government. Sometimes it's federal government. It's multifaceted and multiple levels. Like we have enough enemies. There's only 15 million of us
Oh yeah.
active hunters. There's more than that are retired, and there's more than that agree with us. But again, going back to skin in the game, they don't have skin in the game anymore. They don't care.
Yeah.
So we are a very small minority that needs to be vocal and needs to flex when and where we can.
Yeah. You know, when I left the state of Washington, I was like, whew, let me tell you, I don't have to worry about that politics of no spring bear season anymore. Huh? Wrong. Wrong.
Yeah.
That is like the farthest from the truth. I have to constantly be advocating. And now that I'm down here in Texas, it's like, do you realize what's going on out west? Do you realize what's been happening in Colorado? And people are like, wow, I never think outside my state. And it's like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And if you gotta stand, you have to stand. Um, and we have
And
to
Texas isn't immune.
know.
They had gun control laws introduced last session. They had a dog bill go through that limits the number of intact females you can have and puppies you can produce before you become a commercial breeder, which then opens you up to USDA inspections, business licenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So it's starting with the blue states, yes, and they're going to get carved up and carved out quickly, but it will trickle down to the purple states and then to the red states, especially on those dog issues. I mean, if it can pass in Texas, it can pass anywhere.
Right. Dying 1,000 cuts, right? Just slowly and surely. Our Canadian friend, I feel for you, brother. He says our firearms are considered a privilege and not a right. It's a may, not a shall, like what we talked about earlier. We also deal with no unification between the multifaceted firearm and hunting enthusiasts. Yeah. And let's talk about that for a minute. The gun enthusiast or the gun owner, the person who supports guns, but then they don't hunt and they don't support hunting. That is something that we need to be able to merge as well.
And that goes both ways. Okay,
Yes,
so let's
hunters need to
stop
be able to
because
support.
this is the FUD and the tech tard argument. Okay, The hunters that don't support AR-15s, that don't support handguns, that don't care about semi-automatic bans, etc. It goes both ways, right?
Right.
I mean, you want to get down to brass tacks. Those gun guys who shoot 3-gun and ARs and go to the range and shoot handguns are putting in more money into Pittman Robertson than hunting art is.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're good, you shoot 1 round a year for a deer. So a box of ammo will last you a decade or more. Yeah, that's not doing a lot for Pittman Robertson.
Right.
But that guy who's shooting an AR in competition or a handgun is racking up the boxes of ammo and contributing to Pittman Robertson.
Yeah. Well, let me throw a complaint out to you, Brian. I know we've had this conversation before. It's been several years, but like the NRA, when I see them in the publications that they put out, they always call it an assault rifle. And we already talked about the definition of words, and it's like it's not an assault rifle. It's an Armalite rifle, the creator of it. But yet they play into the anti-gun crowd by calling it what they call it, where this is an assault mouse. The minute I
Yeah.
throw it at you and use it against you, the gun isn't a verb. Do you have feelings on that, or what's your take?
Yeah, no, well, I have never seen the NRA do that. American Hunter or American Rifleman or any of those. I haven't seen them do that. There's the terms, I usually use the term semi-automatic,
Mm-hmm.
semi-automatic rifle, semi-automatic shotgun, handgun, and so and that I find resonates, I guess, with hunters. Like, okay, this bill is supposedly aimed at AR-15 platforms and the like rifles.
Yeah.
It's written so that your Benelli and your Browning semi-auto are in that same league.
Yeah.
So your duck hunting gun is the same thing as that coyote gun.
Yep.
So I usually use the term semi-automatic. There's been, modern sporting rifles is another term they use and stuff. Yeah, I try not to use those terms personally,
Yeah.
as far as assault weapon, yada yada yada.
My first hunting rifle was an AR. I bought an AR-15 for coyote hunting, and then when it came to a deer size caliber, I bought an AR-10 in 308. And I walked around the woods hunting with an AR. And I still think it's badass, and I support people who do it, and they're like, "Man, are you allowed to carry a magazine?" They call it clips, which by the way is the wrong term, right? You're allowed to carry more than 3 bullets or, whatever. It's like, learn your laws, people. Read your hunting guides and your books and whatever, and
That
learn.
gets into yeah. I mean and that gets into an interesting thing that intersected with my life when I was at Outdoor Life magazine, and we ended up doing a story on why are different guns popular, and it's because it goes back to war. Like going back, the M1, they came back from war. That was the gun they were familiar with, the platform they were familiar with. So they took it into the woods. And that has just evolved literally by that. So our soldiers today are trained on an AR style platform,
Yep.
and that becomes popular. It's a matter of time before it cycles through and it becomes the norm, except we have all these bans and everything else. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man. I love it. Brother, I always enjoy talking with you. I love catching up. This is a
Yeah.
great
Good
time.
time.
It's important. The information we talked about on this episode is so important for people to hear. And this might not be the most listened to episode that I release this year, but it also has the ability to be the most important. And for people to understand the defense of the things that they love. And if you
Yeah.
love it, and this is the whole concept of conservation, if you love it, you want to protect it so it lasts and sticks around for generations to come. That's called conservation, and making sure that we conserve what we have so that it sticks around for the next generation of people to experience it and enjoy this wonderful world and this wonderful lifestyle that we've chosen into, and how greatly it's impacted our lives. Um, I get so passionate about this. I'm like, how can you guys not understand? Like, come on. I feel like Braveheart, where William Wallace is like, all men die, not all men truly live, and this is your moment to take a stand and truly live and live that life and impact and have a legacy for others to enjoy. Um, our Canadian friend, he wrote, if you're interested, I wrote a massive article that was picked up by a nonprofit called Hunters for BC.ca. It's about the Grizz ban in BC and backs up all the evidence supporting conservation. Love it, brother. Go to soulseekersnation.com, go to the contact us page, send me a link. I'd love to take a read. I'll dive into that myself personally. Bri, how can we support Sportsman's Alliance?
Become a member. That's great. Please become a member. You can, if you want to support the legal fight. I mean, we're taking on the Bureau of Land Management. We're taking on the Centers for Disease Control. Taking on the state of Washington. Just took on the state of Colorado. We've just signed on as an amicus brief for a friend of the court for Lowy versus Daniel defense, which is a First Amendment issue at the core, but has to do with guns. And we're not done. The other side is gearing up to come after the Trump administration. Okay.
Mm.
They have just one. Earth Justice has 600 active lawsuits going. Okay. Last year, they and last time Trump was in office, Center for Biological Diversity, Earth Justice, and these guys filed suit every single day against the Trump administration and against states, trying to stop hunting, trying to stop shooting, trying to stop everything we do. We need support. The hunting industry, if you take all of the lawyers on the other side and our lawyers on our side, we're outnumbered 70-1.
Mm.
70-1. Okay. So we need help. You can donate and give it to the foundation. You can even earmark it for legal defense if you want to. Sportsman'salliancefoundation.org, legal defense. You can join sportsmansalliance.org. You can join and become a member, donate. If nothing else, just sign up for an alert. It's free. You get on the list when something hits your state, all those headline news you saw, every single one of those goes out to your email if you live in that state. And then you'll get a weekly update that is an overarching look at the country and what was going on.
Mm. I love it. And I love when you said this back a few years ago, and I want you to repeat it. If you're going to spend your money in conservation or the protection of hunting and your rights, you layer it with where you think you should join first, followed, and followed. Can you break that down for people?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd layer it first, second, third, but the, the biggest thing how I see it is pick your top three. Like you can go broke. I had an old hunting guide tell me that's like you can go broke supporting everything you love.
Mm.
So protect your gun rights, protect your hunting rights, and pick your favorite species to to fund conservation projects for. That's pheasants, do pheasants. If that's deer, if it's elk, do elk. Pick your favorite critter, support it, support the Sportsman's Alliance who fights that conservation group can work and do its work and you can hunt it and fights for your gun rights, and then support a gun group that protects your Second Amendment.
I love that. I love
That
that.
covers it.
It's important. It's important. Well, emotion driven, right? Like when you connect to the heart, you also connect to the pocketbook, and that's a great way to defend because this all costs money nowadays, and that sucks that we're even talking about that. but it is, and it is what it is. So, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Soul Seekers Podcast. I've really enjoyed having you all on. Thanks for all the people that tuned in on Instagram and shared their comments. Brian, thank you so much for being a fountain of wisdom and just a reliable cornerstone of the hunting community and the defense thereof. If you guys enjoyed this episode, I want you to like it, share it, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, leave a rating, review. All of that stuff helps get the mission statement and the message out of what we're pushing here, and that is that mentorship is conservation, that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, and that you can never outgive good, and that it's time for us to be the change we want to see in the world. Stand up, learn the words, learn the definitions, learn the context of how they're used, and start fighting for the things you love. Once again, for Brian Lynn of the Sportsman'S Alliance and Johnny Mack here at Soul Seekers, be blessed. Thank you so much. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure.